Maybe you have questions about this?
How can you determine who has certain personality or who belongs to certain family?
Yeah, I wouldn't put, it's not like astrology or something. That would actually be cheapening it. So
Yeah.
I think that's naturally when you first hear about these, you want to kind of know what, it's not necessarily even a personality. It's, I think of them more as spheres of how we, if you really think of the Trikaya and the Dharmakaya and the Sambhogakaya, it's how that energy starts to filter into to the Nirmanakaya. And the sense here is that that Dharmakaya energy is breaking up into 5 patterns of energy in the Sambhogakaya, and then it starts to get more solidified as it comes into the Nirmanakaya. I don't think of them as astrology or a personality, and I think it's important to take these slowly and just experientially just work with it, what makes sense to you. And I wouldn't be too concerned about identifying what family you're in or what family anyone else is in. I think if you just use your own sanity and your observation and you start being curious about this, you might start discovering things about it that are helpful. But I don't think it's particularly important that we be concrete about this, or you have to know what your family is, or who someone else's family is. If it is apparent to you, then it could be helpful, but I wouldn't force it in a way that, because then you're starting to bring in your conceptual mind, which is, this is a Vajrayana teaching. It's about working with energies. And I mean, I have to talk about it, and it's conceptual to talk about, but I think the point is that it's being experienced in a very intimate way through the quality of the energy itself.
Thank you very much, Robert. It was so interesting. And is it possible that one person have multiple energies, and also it keeps shifting even in one day from one to another?
It's a very good question, Priti. I think that my sense of it is that we're actually born with a style. Kind of like you have a family. You can't change your family. You had certain parents and siblings, and even though you might want to change your family, you're stuck with the family you were born with. And I think in a sense that applies to the 5 wisdom energies. You generally are born with a style. You might have several. I know people that are not, they don't seem to me to be clearly in any one family, but they seem to straddle several. And I just notice that and say, okay, that's interesting. But I think in general, we're born with a style. And I think that's important because often we don't like our own style. So we develop if let's say you're a Buddha family person and you kind of feel self-conscious because you're kind of slow and not so smart, you might develop a persona of trying to be a Vajra family or a Padma family, especially the Padma family, because they seem to have more fun. So you would develop that persona, but it's not really your family. So you've kind of put something on top of, it's okay, it's your persona, but you're kind of stuck with your family energy. And I think part of working with this is you kind of start to own that and all that goes with it. And then you're working with all the families. And you're usually noticing that 1 or 2 of the families are slightly threatening to you. And you have to really, that's a place where then you have an edge there that you can work with. And that would be very helpful because let's say you're threatened by anger, your own anger, then you're going to project that onto other people and it'll not be very helpful. So when you start to work with your own anger, you're working with the Vajra. It may not be your family, the Vajra family, but you need to be whole in our practice. I think we need to, as much as possible, integrate all of these families. So in the course of a day, you could be shifting and using, if you need to do accounting or something, or you need to go out and organize a demonstration, you're going to shift into some karma energy because you need to do it. Even if it's not your family, you don't do it very well, you can learn to do it better by practicing with it. If you're at a party and you want to have fun, you're going to try to shift into the Padma energy because that's, get in the groove, get in the swing of things. If you want to study, something and really go into it, you're going to shift into the Vajra energy because you need to really pay attention in that way and use that energy to learn. And if you're meditating, it could be it's very helpful to shift into the Buddha family. If you're running a business and you've got to make money, the Ratna energy is going to serve you very well. So I can tell you lots of stories about these energies. One that comes to mind around Ratna was when my wife June has always been a food banker, has run food banks, big food banks, and she's now retired and just helping. We're running the Zen Center together as we're both priests and co-founders of our Zen Center. And but when we first came to Chicago, she was working for Feeding America, which is a very large nonprofit that works with most of the food banks in America. And I used to go to these conferences of the organizers of this network. And many of these people were Christians, and a lot of them were Ratna type of people. And they were impressive. They were really impressive. First of all, they were committed to feeding people, and they had deep faith as Christians, and they were almost all business people, and they knew how to make money. And they were impressive. I have to say, they had a lot of confidence. And so I think these Buddha families are actually, to me, very powerful expressions of awakened energy.
May I ask, Robert, where does the story of White Tara and the 5 families come from? What document is it found in?
Oh, that's a really good question, Paul. It's a Tantra practice, so it comes from Tantra, but I do believe there is a sutra. I have not researched that, so I don't know. There are people like Irene Rockwell that has a nonprofit. She was a student of Trungpa that teaches nothing but about the 5 wisdom energies. But I don't know if there may be a really old source material for this, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. And the White Tara is not particularly in the mandala family of the 5 Buddha families. She's a bodhisattva, and there's also a green Tara. There are many different beings in Buddhism. It's very rich. And as I've been painting these, what I've learned is that, and in fact, I want to go back and repaint the Amida Buddha that I did, which I'll show you in a moment, because I've discovered that the Buddha families usually are painted in a very simple way, whereas the bodhisattvas are much more Baroque and have lots of jewels and ornaments and things. And one of the things when I was trying to paint the Amida Buddha, I discovered, and I was asking David about it, was a lot of the figures of Amida Buddha are very simple. And I find that actually very inspiring.
How long does it take usually for you to paint one painting?
Akshogya Buddha, I took a long time, first of all, because someone had commissioned me to do it. And I felt some responsibility to do it really well. So I took a long time on that, and I was kind of researching it. They take a while. I enjoy painting them, so I'm not in a rush to finish them. Often when I do other kinds of paintings, it doesn't take me, like when I do landscapes and things, I could do a landscape in a couple hours. Now, everything I do is digital. I don't paint anymore with oils. I just do everything on a computer.
I'm wondering, when you're painting these Buddhas, so what do you experience in that? You know, what is happening in your heart and mind when you paint the Buddhas?
Well, I get something of the quality, the quality of the Buddha. So the White Tara was just pure joy. I mean, just something so beautiful. And in fact, I felt that I couldn't represent it the way that I saw it when I did the Feeding the Demons practice. It was always a sort of a disappointment from the point of view of my imagination to where it comes out. But the experience of painting it was just joyful, and kind of lost track of time. I didn't really want to do anything else. It's like, and so I sort of experience when I'm doing the Buddha like if I'm doing Manjusri, I experience some of the quality of that cutting wisdom of Manjusri. You know, it's really needs to cut. That's what Manjusri does.
Is that in any way different from, like, say, reading about him or reading text or doing some recitations or whatever? Is that kind of drawing different for you?
Well, for me it is, but it might not be for you. You know, so I'm hesitant to make any draw any conclusions there. You might
I'm just asking for your experience about that. You see,
well, for me personally, reading
yeah.
about Manjusri would be fine. It would be wonderful too. But painting is, I'm a very visual person. So when I paint something, it's more graphic and immediate and intimate to me in a way. So I'm almost disappointed when I'm done, because it's really more interesting being in the process of painting it than the finished product. But I like the finished product too often. I'll share with you some of the Buddha family. So this was an example of kind of the negative side of these Buddha families. The Buddha family itself is kind of dull and kind of puts its head in the sand. So the kind of neurosis of a Buddha family would be if you were, you know, living in an apartment and you heard your neighbor next door was having a knockdown, drag out fight, and they're, you know, sounds like they're going to kill each other. A Buddha family style, and I'm overgeneralizing here, would be if they were watching TV and they hear that fight next door, they're just going to turn up the volume on the TV. They're going to just put their head in the sand and ignore the unpleasant thing that's going on around them. That's a kind of neurotic side of the Buddha family. They also tend to be kind of spaced out sometimes. Vajra family can get stuck on an ideology and be very rigid, which is paradoxical because the awakened Vajra energy can take many points of view. So the Ratna energy, as I said, can be very puffed up and inflated in a way that's really not pleasant to be around. Padma family tends to be really grasping. It can be really manipulative, and it loves play. You know, it's a sensual kind of energy that loves the senses and the kind of the surface of things. And the Karma family, as I said, can be very controlling and competitive and paranoid and kind of you know, kind of like having eyes in the back of its head. So, and then here at my Zen Center, I developed a governing model called shared stewardship, which was developed at the Zen Center in Los Angeles by a Gyoku Roshi. And I use the 5 Buddha families, and we have circles. So we govern by doing council circle. I'm trying to make the way we govern our center match something about how we practice, so it's not a big separation. So when we do any kind of a business meeting, we always start by connecting to each other in council and seeing where we're at before we go into the business. And we have different circles that conduct the business of the Zen Center. We also have support circles that we have a women's circle, we have a circle that's studying about death and dying. So each of these circles kind of, in my mind, kind of fit into these different 5 energies. And I like to think that we're more balanced because we're trying to include all the energies in our community. And then there's all these kind of charts that you can make up that talk about how each of these families can be related to the 6 realms. They can be related to human activity here. They can even be related to the paramitas and the skandhas. And I even relate them to the edge stage that Joan Halifax talks about. But it's not necessary to, I mean, from your point of view, this might be just going overboard, and that, you know, it's all right. So the first one this is Vairocana Buddha, the Buddha that is in the Buddha family energy. It's all pervading space. It's accommodating. It's a peaceful, pacifying energy, and it it's very comfortable with meditation and just being open. It's a very open energy, very spacious is, I guess, the way I would say. This is Akshobhya Buddha, which is in the Vajra Buddha family. Again, you can sort of see there's a kind of wrathful quality about this Buddha. And I think that's, when I was working on this, I felt that I took in a lot of that wrathful energy, and it was very powerful. It's we say it's the immobile, the one that's immobile. That doesn't, it's a very strong, powerful energy. At least that's how I experienced it. But also very precise, wanting to really be clear and not take any shortcuts at all. And this was the Amida Buddha that I painted, which is quite Baroque in style. And there's, as I'm sure you all know, there are, you're very familiar with Amida Buddha. There are many Amida Buddhas that are very simple. And I find actually I want to go back and paint this in a simpler style. But this is what the first, and I really enjoyed painting this. It was just delightful. And I would love to just be here. And while I was painting, I have some ambiguity about the gender of Amida Buddha. I guess Amida Buddha is male, but I often experience these as, I experience Akshobhya Buddha as masculine and Vairocana as masculine. I have some ambiguity about the gender of this particular Amida Buddha that I painted, though I think Amida Buddha is generally male, right, David?
What's the question? Is Amida Buddha masculine or feminine? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. Okay, I feel better hearing that answer. Good, good. Okay, so.
But one of the things that is occurring to me as you're talking is whether these in some ways map onto the deities in the European tradition, the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Because Hydra energy you were talking about at the beginning, it sounds very much like Athena.
Oh, yes,
Who's a
interesting.
martial figure with great intelligence.
Uh-huh.
And the opposite pole, which would be Amida Buddha in this.
Well, I think of Apollo as being, Apollo seems to me to be quite Vajra-like.
Yes, that would be the masculine one.
And
yes.
I've often,
So there's a masculine and feminine.
I think there was quite a bit of contact culturally between with the Prajnaparamita Sutras and pre-Socratic Greece. And I think also the Indian culture got a lot of its sense of representing things from the Greek culture. So a lot of the early Buddha figures have a very Apollonian look, and they're very beautiful to me. And I think that's influence from Greece.
And
So
maybe the Amida pole, which is the opposite, would be Aphrodite.
Yes, that would be very interesting. I think I'll explore that a little bit. Yeah. So then I did the Ratna Sambhava. I'm not totally happy with this one, but this is what I did so far. Ratna is really an enriching energy. It's very earthy, so I use a lot of earthy tones in this. And this feels masculine to me. He has a jewel, not much. Again, I'm not real happy with this particular painting, but there it is. Ratna Buddha family. It's again a very rich, expansive kind of energy that is just very nurturing and earthy. The metaphor that Trungpa used to talk about this family was, it's like you're in a rainforest and you see, things fall over in the rainforest and then something just grows out of it. It's so fertile, it's like pregnant. It's always, things just grow and grow and grow out of this. It's so rich and enriching. This is the Karma Buddha family, Amoghasiddhi Buddha. I think Radhasambhava and Amoghasiddhi Buddha are not as well known as the Vairocana or Amida Buddha, obviously, or even Akshobhya Buddha. But this is the Buddha representing the Karma family. It's all accomplishing action. Again, if you're not a Karma family type of person and you watch a Karma family person do something, you'll just be amazed at how they seem to get things done, and you could never do it that way. But they will, and it'll seem effortless to them. They will do it effortlessly, where it would take you a lot of energy to do the same thing if you're not in that family. I'll give you a story about the Karma family. I went down to Jacksonville 2004 for the presidential election because, as you know, the 4 years before we'd had this big conflict with, and so I went down to help people register to vote with the peacemaker. With the peacemaker, the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and we went into Jacksonville about a week before the election, and we were in a poor neighborhood of Jacksonville, in a building that was part of a black church. And we walked into this building. It was a big room that we were supposed to organize, and it was just completely disorganized. There were computers all over the place, and things were scattered. And I had come down there with a team of people, and one of the people I was traveling with was a lawyer, and I didn't particularly strike it off very well with her. She was a little rude to me and kind of abrupt, and she kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I realized when we got there that she was a karma energy, which I can use karma energy, but it's not probably my style. So I thought, I was trying to organize things, and I realized this is going to take me a long time to get this all organized. So I delegated the thing to her. I said, would you like to organize the room and get things together? She said, sure. And she just whipped it into shape in a couple of hours. I couldn't believe how she did it. And that's what I mean by using these energies. You use the strength of the energy and of course she loved doing that because she did it well. And I would never have done it as well as she, and it would have taken me 5 times as long as well. So that's the Karma family is really efficient and will get things done effortlessly. It's almost self-fulfilling energy. It's already got it done when it starts to think about it. And if you're not in that family and you see people do that, you're just amazed at how they go about organizing that. So that's the 5 families and the Buddhas that go with them.
Robert, just looking at those pictures, they're quite a contemplative focus. And I wondered if within the Buddhist tradition, there's something akin to Orthodox Christian iconography, and the sense that one evokes the presence, or one makes presence the saint or whatever in that iconography. Is it similar in Buddhism?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Paul. I think it is. The practice in Vajrayana is often, when you're doing deity yoga, the student would be working with the teacher, and the teacher would be giving the student this deity yoga practice, and they would read the energy of the Buddha family of that student, and to their best guess, they would direct them towards doing a deity yoga that matched their Buddha family. So if they were a Ratna family energy, they would give them a practice where Ratnasambhava was in the center of the Buddha mandala. Instead of Vairochana being in the center, Ratnasambhava would be in the center, and that would be the primary deity that they would be practicing with. So I think these Buddhas are meant to kind of evoke the quality of that energy, and as much as possible, the presence of it is as much as possible. So that's very interesting that you're relating that to Christian iconographies. I guess it seems to me there would be a lot of similarities.
I think it's interesting what you just said about you would be given to, as you're at the center of your mandala, what is your existing characteristic.
Yeah.
Because some approaches to psychology would be about balancing up, and might think that the thing to do is to give you the opposite quality or something of that kind.
That's not my impression of how it's done in the Vajrayana tradition. You're
Yeah.
actually kind of working with your baseline energy because that's what's given. And to go against that would be to kind of be confusing. You start with where your baseline is, but then it doesn't mean you're not working with the other energies.
So just to bring out the best in you.
Yeah. Why not?
I've got a question. So when you say working with the energy, so how do you work actually with those, say, unawakened sides of that energy? What is actually the practice?
Well, I think you do it. It's very organic. I don't think there's a how-to manual on how to do it. But if you're, let's say, you're in the Buddha family, you notice that you're kind of prone to spacing out and kind of avoiding conflict, perhaps. And you just notice that because if you're sitting and you're practicing, you're starting to become more aware of your patterns of behavior. I think part of any Buddhist practice is that you have some courage and honesty. You try to be honest about how you're behaving, and you notice that you're behaving in ways that aren't very helpful for yourself or people around you. And so then you start working with that. And if you, so I don't think it's necessarily there's a method so much as it is it's just life is, you're living your life and you're noticing that you've got, if you're, you get angry, and we could be in any of these energies, right? Even though you have a family, I might be in the karma family or the padma family, but I'm still going to get angry, and that anger could get in the way of all kinds of stuff. So I don't always relate all this back to the Buddha families. I don't try to be literal about it at all. I think being too literal about it is to sort of take away from the something away from it. I think of them as spheres of energy that we embody and that we can use. But I do think that those 5 emotions are the 5, main kleshas that are taught in Buddhism: greed, anger, ignorance, jealousy, and pride, the 5 big ones. And I think we're working with all 5 of those all the time in our real lives. And so, but you might find that if you have a particular, if you kind of grok your own style, you have a certain patterns that are more prevalent and more kind of grooved in, so to speak. So you really have to, I think you work with it by just not pushing it away, not avoiding it, not just owning it and saying, yeah, this is being very humble and say, yeah, I get angry, or I'm competitive and I'm controlling, or I'm manipulating people. And you just start to notice that your negative behaviors aren't very helpful. And then if you're practicing, I think it's almost self-corrective at that point. But I think the beautiful thing about this is that then you see the other side of that negative energy is a very wonderful awakened energy, which is very, it's enlightened energy. It's enlightenment, how it is manifesting in the world. And so you have you have patterns of negativity, but that are in some ways a limitation. But you also have, what goes with that is something really rich and powerful that you can tap into and open up in yourself. But I don't think you ever have one or the other. I think you have them both. I think that's really important to see, that you can't have nirvana without samsara. You got to have them both together. And if you try to pick one or the other, if you try to pick the nirvana without the emotions, you have an unhealthy psychology developing in your practice, and it's going to it's going to get acted out in ways that are create more suffering. So I always
it was interesting in terms of the how to. It was interesting what you said at the beginning about reversing roles with your demon when you were talking about feeding your demon.
Yeah.
That certainly, because I've done quite a lot of psychodrama and stuff in the past, and that certainly seemed like a definite technique or method that.
Well, I'm not opposed to using techniques and methods. I use Big Mind, and I use voice dialogue quite often with my students, because I do think that it's important to integrate psychology with our spiritual path. And so I use methods from time to time, and I think you could develop a method, if it works for you, of talking to your demon, and it could be very helpful. And the demon could be all kinds of things, and it could be different every time you do that practice. If you want to look at that feeding your demon practice, Alioni has written a book about it and has some excellent guided meditations on it on YouTube and on her website that you could find. And I highly recommend that, because you can adapt that to almost any situation that you could be. When the pandemic started, Lama Alioni was starting asking people the demon, what's the demon of the coronavirus to you? What is that? What comes up for you? So I think as a method, visualizing your negativity, whatever it is, or your shadow, and making it concrete, and then embodying it could be very helpful. And you do something like that in voice dialogue, you're finding the psychophysical energy of a particular voice, your controller, or your inner critic or something, and by giving it voice, it becomes more immediate and real than simply thinking about it intellectually. So I think those methods that are trying to embody it and make it more graphic, not everyone's visual, so I'm hesitant to say there's any one way. I think people are really different. I find that not everyone is visual. So I wouldn't always give the same thing to everyone. Some people would, if you're a writer, maybe the best thing you can do is journal about it, and you write about it, and that becomes your method. So I think it's also important that people really trust your own sanity and find your own strengths.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you.